Welcome to the most exciting presentation of AHR 2020. And thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you enjoyed the show so far. It's a very exciting show. A lot of new awesome products out there. Definitely, it's been amazing so far. So today we're going to talk about solar water heating in renewable landscape. But first, let's define the renewable landscape that we're talking about. So, what are the trends that we're seeing? Well, not too long ago, over 100 countries and cities around the world committed to basically reach net zero carbon emission by 2050. You see some of the major economic powers, and some of these are traditional fossil fuel producers that are moving toward complete electrification and decarbonization. The same trend that's happening globally is happening in the US. And one of the best ways, basically, to reach that goal is to retrofit. So, same thing is happening in the US. In California, we're seeing it a lot. That's where we're from, so that's why we have the most information about that specific state. But it's also happening throughout the nation. Cities are moving toward electrification and decarbonization. But does local decarbonization by itself make any sense? 63.6% of our electricity in the US is coming from fossil fuel. So if you're just using electrification, if you're locally using decarbonization, basically you're still creating that carbon footprint somewhere else. You're not eliminating it, you're just displacing it. The true decarbonization can only be reached through actual net zero communities. And net zero buildings are literally the building blocks of net zero communities. But what are we talking about when we talk about true net zero buildings? First, let's reduce their loads. Find ways to improve the efficiency and the insulation of the building to reduce the loads. If you have a cooling load or a heating load and your building is not well insulated, guess what? Your load is just going to increase. Next solution, increase efficiency. Use more efficient systems, more efficient boilers, more efficient HVAC systems. They're all ways coming in. New technologies coming in, more efficient technologies coming in. And last but definitely not least is on-site energy generation. In order for your building to be a true net zero building, you need to be able to produce at least a good percentage of your demand on the spot. Obviously, like anything else that we attempt to do, there are challenges involved. Main challenges, balancing the loads. For example, people put PV on the roof, local energy generation. That's awesome. But your load comes in the afternoon when there is no sun. So again, balancing that load without proper storage won't make sense. Same thing applies to anything else that you integrate into your building. You have to be able to balance the loads and be able to meet those peak load hours that will be throughout the building, throughout the year. In the afternoon, people come from work, they want to take showers, you have a peak in your load. They want to cook, they want to clean, you will have that peak. So unless you can manage those somehow with proper systems, proper storage, then your system won't be an actual net zero. Just when we look at the energy loads, both in, this is basically just for electricity, where our electricity is going. This is the end use for our electricity. When we look at it in both residential and commercial systems, we see 30% of your electricity in your residential buildings is going toward heating, either space heating or domestic water heating. That number is about 20% for commercial buildings. So as you can see, heating in general is a big load. And when we target those specific huge loads, that's where you get the most benefit, basically. You go after the biggest energy consumer. But why do we say solar thermal? After all these years, you all probably heard of it. It was around in the 70s, it was around in the 80s, it was around in the 90s. Why is it still relevant? Well, because when we talk about all that stuff, it checks every box. We talk about efficiency first. On average, a solar thermal flat plate collector has a maximum efficiency of 90%. And overall, system efficiency is about 65%. You're all, professionals in the field, and you can compare that efficiency numbers to other systems that are out there. Even though solar thermal has been around for a long time, it doesn't make it, by definition, an irrelevant technology. Actually, it makes it more relevant than ever because the time-tested technology that we can rely on. We have seen the effectiveness. We have seen the empirical data that supports these claims. So, maybe look at, for example, now with electrification going on a lot, the talk of the town, heat pumps. Great technology, no doubt about it. But a heat pump runs an average COP of between, let's say, 1.5 to 2.6. Some people might say that's too low. Let's say between 2 to 4. A correctly sized solar thermal system has a COP of 9 to 14. So, what does that tell you? Basically, both systems are designed to accumulate heat over time and dispense it on demand. So when you have a certain amount of time to collect as much as energy as possible, which one makes more sense? But when we talk about solar thermal, there are several things that you guys need to keep in mind. First of all, when designing a solar thermal system, you never ever design it to meet your entire load. You basically figure out what your load is, you design your secondary heater based on your entire load, and your solar thermal system is designed to meet a percentage of that load, basically. So there are three factors that you keep in mind when you're designing the system. How much roof space you have available, that's the first one. If you need 2,000 square feet of collector and you only have 500 feet of roof space, that's the first limitation. We move on to storage. Solar thermal without storage, just like solar PV without storage, is meaningless. Unless you store the energy that you generated throughout the day to meet your peak demand time, then your system is not doing what it's supposed to do, basically. So the next limiting factor is storage. How much room you have to have that solar thermal stored. And the last, definitely not least, is budget, which always is a limiting factor. When we're talking about, and when we're comparing solar thermal to other technologies such as heat pump or other heating technologies that are available, they're not saying that you choose one over another. You're just saying finding the right solution by combining these systems can definitely improve your COP, will improve your efficiency, and at the end of the day will benefit the client. As great as solar thermal water heating is, there are always, again, certain challenges involved with this technology. Traditionally speaking, for the longest time, the solar thermal contractor would show up at your place with a tank, controller, a collector, and a bunch of the pieces that they needed, and they would put it together themselves. Just imagine if you ordered a heat pump water heater and somebody showed up with a tank and a bag of parts. Like, yeah, I'm going to assemble it here for you. You wouldn't like that, would you? So that's one of the things. That individual design and installation basically created some problems. Some of the designs that they had was truly amazing. Some of them not so much. But the lack of uniformity in design and installation creates a lot of problems. One of the biggest challenges for our technical staff is to figure out the installation that, when people call us and ask for help, they're on the job, they have to spend hours to figure out what they've done to begin with to be able to help. Another factor is solar thermal installation are time consuming. You have a collector on the roof, you still have to do work in your mechanical room. So if you want to put together all the components yourself, you're bound to spend a lot of time, obviously, resources at the installation site. So, Sunner's been around for over 4 decades, and as a manufacturer of these product, we took upon ourselves to come up with an actual solution for this problem. So what was our solution? Just like any other water heating system, we wanted a standard factory-built and tested water heater, both commercially and residentially. Doesn't matter. So how we go about doing that is very simple. We actually use ASHRAE standard, as you can see here on this chart, to determine your actual hot water demand per day. This is different from what you calculate based on the number of faucets and whatnot. This is the ASHRAE standard. Basically, we'll put, for example, for an apartment building, if you have 2 to 20 units, we'll tell you use 42 gallons per day per unit to establish how much hot water you will need. Once we have that number in gallons, we then convert that information to number of collectors that you will need using an F-chart. And now, Sunnerd has the product, basically. So once you establish how big of an array you need for your collector, the rest is very easy for us, because we already have the right pump station solution to go with the specific size of array that you're using on your project. And from there, you establish the size of storage that you would need. The general rule of thumb for storage calculation is we calculate the size of the array. For commercial system, we time that by 1.4 factor, and that will give you the size of storage that you would need in gallons. Our line of hot water station and solar station, which are our commercial pump stations, are all manufactured at our facility. So basically, we receive the solar storage tank from one of our suppliers in the US. And then all the parts and components that you need to operate the solar thermal system is installed on your tank. Or if it's a commercial system, all the parts and components that you would need are installed within your solar station pump station. So all you need is to connect that to your array and to your storage. That's all basic that you need to worry about. Sunnerd Residential Solutions, we have a complete line of pump station and solar hot water stations for residential purposes. We have the Islander here. This is our Islander direct system. As you can see, all like pump, controller, expansion tanks, all the gauges, and every component that you need to operate the system, according to SRCC OG300 standard, are already installed on the system. Same stands true for the Solar Rate E that you see here, and the Solar Rate AC, both of our, which are glycol systems, indirect glycol system. And the last one, here, very right, is the drain pack system that you can see at our booth at booth 6180. On the left side, you have the solar stations here. These are again pre-plumbed, ready to deploy systems. One with an internal heat exchanger built into it, and the other one doesn't have a heat exchanger. The one at the bottom, Solar Station HX, can in fact be installed on any existing water heater and add a solar loop to it. Here are our commercial line, basically the Solar Station XL and Solar Station XXL. So remember when I was talking about figuring out what size of array you need? So once you establish that, can definitely tell you what size of, what model basically solar station you would need to match that array, and then we'll tell you what size storage you will need to basically achieve the solar fraction that you're looking for. The Solar Station XL that you see here will go up to 720 square feet of array, and the Solar Station XXL will go up all the way up to 3,000 square feet of array. One thing that we've been moving toward recently is using atmospheric tanks for solar storage instead of using ASME tanks. Well, everybody here knows the price difference between an ASME tank and just an atmospheric reservoir. Probably 1/3 of the price for ASME. But the concern is, whenever we talk about atmospheric tank, what they get worried about is the pressure drops within your system. So how do you go around that? Very simple, heat injection. So So what we do, for example, let's say you have a 3-inch line to your boiler. We will inject heat constantly via a 1-inch standard line to your 3-inch. There is no pressure drop, and by preheating the water feeding into your boiler, basically we'll take the load, same load that we want to take off from there, without messing with your pressure drops, without messing with the system flow, anything like that. Very simple, very reliable, and been deployed in the field for the past 3-4 years with huge successes. So that's another factor that we're looking at in order to bring down the general initial cost of investment for solar thermal commercial installations. Give you a little bit of background about SunEarth. As I said, we've been around since 1978. We have a huge facility in Fontana, California. The only facility in the US that I know of that was purpose-built for solar thermal flat plate collector manufacturing. And since 2014, we are 100% ESOL. So there is no single person in charge of the company. So, there is no need for actual succession plan. The succession plan is already there, or the employees who are working. So we've been around for 42 years, and we have all the intention to stay around for at least another 42 years. So we'll see how that works out. As far as what solar thermal can actually do, 210 megawatt of energy was how much energy we produced within the past decade. In the past 10 years, the collectors that left our facility basically produced 210 megawatt of energy. So that's something to consider when we consider the benefits of solar thermal. At this point, I want to take any questions that you guys might have about this presentation. Yes, sir.